Welcome to the regular council meeting of the Region of Queens Municipality, Tuesday, July 13th. I would remind everyone that the meeting is being videoed, and any cell phones, please make sure that they are on mute. And we will begin our agenda. Are there any changes or approval to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, I ask for a motion to accept the agenda. Moved by Councillor Gidney, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favor? Carried. Tabling of petitions. Are there any petitions to be tabled? Public question comment session. I ask anyone in the gallery wishing to make a comment to please be of the mind that we have a 5-minute maximum on your comments, and you must first give your name and your civic address. Yes.
Yes, Mayor Norman, Leon Robertson, College Street in Liverpool. First of all, I want to say looks like the renovations here are well underway. I thought maybe they'd be finished by now, but hopefully in the near future. And hopefully that'll include upgrading the sound system. And under 9.1, the use of the parking lot there for the church services. And that just reminded me that it's still on council's radar, looking down the road at possibly putting a bandstand or a gazebo down in the park. The park doesn't get used that much. So if you had that there, I think you'd draw a lot more people. And the other thing there I was going to mention, the announcement of the province there with respect to replacing and updating the homes for special care and boarding homes and so on. And Hillsview Acres and Queens Manor was mentioned, so it looks as though that we may be getting maybe a new Hillsview Acres and an update or whatever at the minute down the road.
That would be our hope, yes?
Yes. It's good. It was good information. I think it's long overdue and needed. And the other thing I just want to mention is under 3.1 and 2, it'll be good to get updates on the rails and trails and also EMO updates.
You are correct.
Thank you, Mayor Norman.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council?
Yes, hello, my name is Deborah Lalone McDonald. I'm a constituent in District 2, live at 14 Townland Road. I have brought to Mayor and Council a letter dated June 20 in regards to my lack of employment opportunities here in Liverpool, not only with this region of Queens, the municipality, but with private businesses in town as well. I'm a very qualified individual. I have letters of recommendation stating that for 18 months I've been unable to find work. With my recent attempt here with the municipality, I have a letter directly from Mr. McNeil that is stating defamation statements to me in regards to my lack of employment and skills. It was sent by Shelley Connolly, and what I would like to review today is my letter that was addressed to the mayor and the councillors on June 20 to mayor and I'll review it as I have not had any response. I'm shaken up. I'm very frustrated because this has been a very difficult ordeal for me. So as my letter states, it is subject defamation and unfair hiring practices. To Mayor and Council, the Region of Queens Municipality, good morning. Please review the following correspondence regarding my recent failed employment opportunities with the Region of Queens Municipality. Mayor Norman has previously been alerted to this issue. I am bringing this disturbing matter to the attention of Council in order to bring transparency to the statements made directly from your CAO, Mr. Chris McNeil. I question why he had prematurely and promptly disqualified me for any available positions with the region. And I quote, This decision was based on the fact that your resume did not seem to contain any work experience in the healthcare industry. Mr. McNeil also makes reference that I lack the physical strength required for either of these two entry-level positions as the second reason he promptly disqualified me as a candidate. Mr. McNeil has demonstrated inadequacies in his position, and I question if he has the requisite skills to effectively and ethically perform the assumed position of HR at this region. I have CC'd the Honorable Bernadette Jordan MP, MLA Kim Naslin, to include him in this conversation and bring transparency to this matter. I'll also share with you this letter that I wrote to Mr. McNeil after his defamation statement to me. Thank you for your reply to my questions surrounding my disqualification for any available positions from this region. You claim that I was disqualified for the house cleaning position at Hillsview, as you noted I had no experience in the healthcare industry. Perhaps you overlooked my employment at the hospital for sick children. I worked in the Department of Genetics as secretary for 3 scientists and their 20 lab staff. Dr. Manuel Buchwald, for whom I worked as an Order of Canada recipient for his scientific discoveries with genetic disease. I also included 2 letters of reference from 2 doctors with my resume. I'm not certain if you're aware of the job requirements of expediter in the subarctic of Canada, or reviewed my letter of reference from the CEO of Churchill Wild. Procuring and expediting supplies and guests for 7 remote luxury lodges involves moving product, construction supplies, luggage, and everything that would be required for off-the-grid facilities. The form of transportation was a turbo beaver, and for efficiency, 3,000 pounds of supplies hand-loaded per flight. The position at Hillsview is essentially cleaning staff, which I do have extensive experience. Also, as having been caregiver for my elderly parents for their final journey, implementing strict infectious control measures was essential, as was health and nutrition. Also, during these 5 months as caregiver, I learned everything I could from the occupational health practitioners and healthcare workers, and maintaining daily records of meds was helpful for these palliative care workers. Again, Mr. McNeil, it is very unfortunate that you choose to disqualify me from both of these available positions based on my lack of physical strength and my lack of experience in the healthcare industry. I ask, why have I not had any response from any council? You have, I understand that you put him in power.
Deborah, we allow 5 minutes for public comment session, and I have provided you 6.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address council?
On Green.
Okay.
My name is Arthur Roy. I live on 61 Birch Avenue. So 70 years ago, my father allowed the town of Liverpool to dig a trench down through his land. And now they put a culvert in, and now we're on the 3rd culvert, and it's unsafe. My brother Richard tried to Kevin Weekle, and we called him, got no response from him. My brother Richard died, and so I got a hold of Kevin Weekle and told him about this here. He came and took pictures of it, and he said he would get back to me. He didn't get back to me, but I got a hold of Heather Kelly, and she said that she would look into it. And so the council member didn't get back to me, and they said they would not replace the culvert because it was a natural brook. And I said it wasn't a natural brook, it was a trench. And then she said that makes a difference. So when he went back and said it was a trench, he got back to me and said it doesn't matter if it was a trench or a brook, he wasn't going to replace it. Now the town of Liverpool put it into it, it is their trench, and they're responsible for the trench, and it's very unsafe. At least that's my consideration of it. And then then I got a hold of the mayor, and he said he wouldn't replace it, and he said that I could replace the culvert or put a bridge across, and I said, no, it wasn't my responsibility, and I wasn't gonna take any responsibility for it. And so my father signed something back into 1947, and he didn't get no copy of it. But anyway, through the years, he has told us what went on. I was just a kid, small kid, and I know the town of Liverpool dug the trench because I watched them. So anyway, I let it go to Ralph Gidney come on, and I told him about it, and I shared him about the story about the trench, and that this agreement, this paper that my father signed, I never ever knew what it was. And anyway, he went to the town of Liverpool, and they said they needed proof. And so he come back one day, and he had this here agreement, which I haven't saw for 70-some years, and it told exactly what my father said, and that the trench was supposed to have 115 feet of flagstone over it. The land was supposed to be left away, looking good and safe. And he just dug the trench through, and he left it the way it was. And so my father went to him and said, are you going to come and finish it? And they said, do you have anything in writing? And he didn't. And my parents went to work and tried to get it done, and they couldn't get any response to him. And then my father even said that he would fill the trench back in, and they said he would have to have the rocks removed. And so my father kept on after him. They brought the flagstone in one week, and he took it the next week somewhere else. And so he just gave up onto it. And so anyway, the land was left in a mess. Nothing done. Big rocks on the side of the banks, and a big ditch, and the ditch is 10 feet in some places, and it's just a mess. And my father had to live 50 years looking at that without having anything done. And the only time that the town of Liverpool came into it, the people next door got flooded out, and they come and built the bank up. They never ever done anything for my father, and I told this to the mayor, and she said, well, that's the town of Liverpool. Well, I beg to differ. When me and my brother were treated the same way by the council out here, and we didn't get any response. And so I did put a letter off saying that I am not responsible for this culvert. If anybody gets hurt onto it, is you fellows' responsibility. Now you might say, well, it doesn't call for any culvert in this agreement that my father signed, but it said it was 115 feet flagstone over, so it wouldn't have to have any culvert. And all he got is an old rotten pipe that he got from stealing engines all this while here. And anyway, on this agreement, everything that I told Ralph about this here is on the agreement, and I didn't know about this agreement. But this agreement is good. It went from the town of Liverpool to the Region of Queens, they're responsible. It went from my father to my brother and to myself, and we haven't broken the agreement. Now I told the mayor about it, and she said, yes, we will meet next week and we will sort it out. In the meantime, Kevin Week will come along early in the morning, and one of the things that the agreement says that the town of Liverpool, the Region of Queens, can come on the land and do repairs to it anytime they want to. But he come down the pipeline, come through a swamp, through the barbed wire line fence, he come through my electric fence, and come down through, and he was just on a run taking these pictures. And then I called him up and I said, you was on the land? He said, yes, I was taking pictures, but they're all off. And so, anyway, I said, okay. So then I called him up and a few days later and said, if you come down through that way, the cattle will soon be going out to eat the grass off. And I said, don't. And he said, yes. He changed his mind, and he said, I took the pictures for Adam Grant. And so that made a big difference. Then, within a week, the mayor called me up and said, we have a new agreement drew up. And the new agreement says that they will replace the culvert, replace it with some other contractor will come and do it. I wasn't allowed to have no opinion on it. When they were done, then the land is mine. It ain't no land, it's a big ditch there. And the thing about it is, like I say, it has rocks on the side, and it's supposed to be nice, and I wouldn't sign it, and I am sticking to my father's agreement. He signed it was good enough for him, it's good enough for Brad, it's good enough for me, and I want them to go to work and fill their responsibility of this agreement. Go to work and put the flagstone 150 feet. I want the rocks off the land. There was so many rocks, they put them all through the field everywhere. They got them on the bank, and it's just a big mess. And I think it's terrible what you fellows, the town of Liverpool, then you fellows done to my family, right? And my father had, say, 50 years looking at that mess. And I want them to, you fellows, to do your responsibility to
Mr.
fix
Roy,
that agreement.
Mr. Roy.
How about a time? Good, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll be back next time to finish it up.
Anyone else wish to make a comment? Hearing none, I'll ask for approval of the minutes, regular council meeting, June 22nd, 2021. Moved by Councillor Hawk, seconded by Councillor Charlton. All those in favor? Thank you. Nothing on dangerous and unsightly premises, nothing to report under economic development. Corporate services, request for use of Liverpool parking lot. There's a recommendation in your package. Someone would like to make that motion? Councillor Gibney?
I move that Council of Regional Queens Municipality grant permission for Highway Pentecostal Assembly and Salvation Army to use the Liverpool waterfront parking lot for church services on every Sunday evening in July and August, and on September 5th, 2021, from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that such use be in accordance with the parking lot bylaw, which requires all cars to be parked within the designated parking stalls. And further that the services comply with all municipal, provincial, and federal regulations and protocols in place during each weekly service.
Seconded by Councillor Faint. Any questions or comments? Not, I'll ask for the vote. All those in favor? Contrary? Passed. Engineering and Public Works, nothing to report. 11.1, Hillview Acres write-off report. There's a recommendation within the package. Someone like to make that recommendation? Councillor Brown.
I recommend that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality approve the write-off of accounts 2734, 2433, 2219, 2611, 2610, 2478, 2341, 2523, 2573, 2530, 2776, 3004, 2909, including interest.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Muse. Is there any questions of Ms. Plummer, Manager of Finance? Councillor Gidney.
I recommend that the motion be amended to include the amount of $26,819.41 being the balance of these accounts.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Without a seconder, the amendment fails.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Plummer, Manager of Finance? Everyone understands what was in the package? Okay, I'll ask for the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried except for one. 11.2 is approval of evaluation allowance for fiscal 2020. There's a recommendation in the packet, and Ms. Vino, our Director of Public Services, will be available to answer any questions. We should first make the recommendation. Deputy Mayor Muse.
I recommend that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality authorize a valuation and allowance for taxes receivable of $260,018.78 on the allowance for other accounts receivable of $143,838 for the fiscal year of 2020 to 2021.
Before I ask for a seconder for that, there was just a slight error in the typing of that. You will notice in the information, the amount is $143,838.83. So Deputy Muse, $143,083.83, yes?
$143,838.83 or 800?
Right, $142,838.83. And is there a seconder? Councillor Hawks. Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Vino, Director of Corporate Services, respecting this matter? No questions? Councillor Charlton.
I don't have any questions, but I'm just thinking for public purposes, we can just have a little bit of background, so people understand.
We can do that.
Thank you.
And I guess just to clarify, all of these matters are available in agendas and things, but yes, we will ask for an explanation.
Okay. Evaluation allowance is an account that's set up to consider that not all of your accounts receivable are eventually going to be collected. So every year, we had set up a valuation allowance for taxes that are deemed by us to be uncollectible for various reasons. The amount that's in the evaluation allowance, for example, this year includes over $100,000 worth of properties that have issues, survey issues, mapping issues, state issues. There's 56 properties like that. So we cannot sell them at tax sale until those things have been considered. We also have a valuation allowance for our other accounts receivable, our landfill, not so much our water and sewer rather, because we have that disconnection, but for landfill, we definitely do. So basically what it's saying is, I have $100,000 worth of payments coming to me, but I know that 10% of those I'm never going to get. So you have to consider that, and we look at that every single year. And I will be bringing forth a policy to the Audit and Internal Control Committee later on in this year that will specify how that mechanism works. Because Mallory, the manager of finance and myself reviewed all of the valuation allowance entries this year. We had to make some adjustments. So, it will be a lot less subjective from now on. Any questions? If not, I will ask for the motion. All those in favor? Carried. 11.3, temporary boring resolution, Brooklyn, recommendation, Councillor Amaro.
I move that the Council of Region of Queens Municipality approves temporary borrowing resolution file 21-22-01 in the amount of $507,757 for the Brooklyn Sewer Water Project.
Seconded by Councillor Charlton. And an explanation, please.
So, this was actually in the budget for last year that we were gonna borrow the money for this particular project. And because of the change of staff, myself, debentures are issued by the Municipal Finance Corporation in the spring and in the fall. And because I just had started, I wasn't really aware of all the intricacies and I missed the deadline. So we funded that project, on a temporary measure out of the sewer reserve for this fiscal year. But what I'll be doing is going to the Municipal Finance Corporation in the fall. We'll be getting the debenture that was approved in the budget for last fiscal year, and we'll repay the reserve for that amount.
Any questions of Ms. Vino, Director of Corporate Services? Oh, hearing none, I'll ask for the vote on the motion. All those in favor? Carried. None opposed. 11.4 is a policy regarding payment of taxes. And there is a recommendation, Councillor Brown.
I recommend that Council of the Region of Queens Municipality approve policy 4 respecting payment of taxes.
And it's seconded by Councillor Hawks.
So, CAO reviewed this policy, and cleaned up a lot of the older policies and combined it into this one. And it basically, again, it just takes out the subjectivity of it, makes it, very clear cut. With a policy, you don't pay your taxes for X number of years, we can now go to tax sale. We've shortened the time between the amount you don't pay your taxes and the amount we can go to tax sale. So basically, it's clarifying things for the public, so they don't have to go through 3 different policies, it's everything in one.
So within your package, you'll notice the policies which will be repealed, and they all are now all combined as one. And as Ms. Vino noted, the one major change was currently tax sale can go from 3 years plus the current year, which would make it 4, to now through just 3 years. So we've gone from 4 to 3. Councilor Brown.
I believe one of the other changes was we lowered the threshold.
Yes, that's right.
For going to tax sale, because about 20 years ago, they had a statement saying that anything under $300 would not go to tax sale.
Correct.
But there are properties that are resourced that are taxed at such a small rate that they could go 20 years and stay on our books as outstanding.
Yeah.
So this was to clean that up as well.
Yeah, so it gives us the option in finance of going, to try and collect some of those taxes. I mean, obviously, the manager of finance and myself will be focusing on the more highly valued and highly, amounts that are owing. But it's good to have that option, because eventually we're gonna get all of this cleaned up and we're gonna start looking at those things. So it's good to have it all now, and what you'll notice in the next, year to 18 months is we'll be bringing forward a lot more of these policies that really clarify how we do things and why we do things, so it makes things a lot more transparent for everybody.
Any questions? If not, I will ask for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. .1, the Medway Head Lighthouse Society. And there's a recommendation. Would like to make that recommendation? Councilor Brown.
Recommend that the Council of the Region of Queens Municipality agrees to waive Policy 58, consumption of alcohol on municipally owned properties, at the request of Medway Head Lighthouse Society at Port Medway Warehouse on August 13th, 2021, and that the applicant be required to submit proof of insurance in no less than $2 million per occurrence with the Region of Queens Municipality as additional insured, and copy of the in effect liquor license from the province of Nova Scotia to the region, and that all municipal, provincial, and federal laws be strictly adhered to.
Seconded by Councilor Romero. And Ms. Headley, our Community Development Coordinator, will give a brief description.
So Medway Head Lighthouse Society, asks for this waiver annually, they've been granted it annually, which we didn't have them last year with COVID restrictions, but they are hoping to hold the event this summer with the relaxed restrictions and.
Any questions or comments of Ms. Hanley? Councilor Charlton?
So this is a common thing from time to time for this request of the alcohol?
And we often have, I can recall past privateer days, there would be a request to waive consumption, down at the Port Point and other, so there are various times through the year when groups or individuals will ask for that policy to be waived.
Okay.
And if they provide the correct amount of insurance. Yes, so, in short, yes. Any other comments? Now I'm going to ask for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Nothing to to report under planning. Councillor Charlton, 14.1, who requested this matter committee of the whole discussion.
Yes, thank you. I find as, you know, we've settled in here a little bit as new councillors, most of us, that it's been difficult to get the proper public engagement with the process that we have. So I feel, especially after our training with Mayor Pam Mood and her take on the committee of the whole, that this would be a good way for us to move forward in the right direction and engage the public. We discuss things at committee of the whole, and then we have a few weeks before it comes back to council, so we're not making our decisions until we've had enough time to gather additional facts if we require them. And it would just be about listening fully first. I think our staff do a good job presenting us the information. I just personally feel that there's not enough time for the public to reach out to us if they have concerns and questions, and I find that that's happening after the fact the decisions have been made. So I feel that this would be a great way for us to move forward and engage the people who voted for us to be their voice and to listen.
Any other comments? Councillor Fancy.
As being on council for my third term, I've had the experience of having both, as our mayor has, and you can see the good, the bad, and the ugly of them. We used to have committees more before where we would stop and talk about things. So everything here now comes straight to the council, and a lot of times it has to be a quick decision. And as Councillor Charlton had brought forward this morning here, is even with the finance, you want to, if the public doesn't know anything about it, also we just vote. And we'll go through and they say, what just happened? Because they don't understand, because there's been no discussions on things prior to. So without our committees that we used to have before, where we were on to bring back the information and things, we've lost that contact. So I think we need the committee of the whole back. We used to have, again, we wanted to, the bad part of it is that when the committee of the whole, you can't make decisions. It has to go, so it has to be a month apart making decisions. So something that is important, you can't put anything to the floor and be able to vote on it. So all you can do is just discuss. So you lose that. That's what we took it away before, because we had the other groups and we had that, and we were doing it that way and it worked. But when the groups disappeared, everything else is kind of just going too fast. And I think I'm very much in support of having a committee of the whole. And if something important comes up and we have to vote on, we'll have to call a special council meeting.
Any other comments? Councillor Merrill.
I agree with Mayor Charlton. I think committee of the whole is a great idea.
Just a comment. I did do some research, further research into committee of whole, and I discovered that the whatever number of years when I was previously on council, that we were not following Borno's rules regarding a committee of the whole structure. So basically, Borno's rules, which are our rules of the House, state that all debate happens at committee of the whole. So if this was a committee of the whole meeting, we would have this in front of us, exactly what we have now. So we would have this, and we would make recommendations to council from committee of the whole. So the recommendations we made this morning are council making motions and it's finished. Committee of the whole would make these motions as a recommendation to council. What I discovered through reading Borno's rules were, there is no debate at council if anything comes from committee of the whole. It is clearly stated in Borno's rules. And I read that and I said to our CAO, but we always debate it twice. We debated at committee of the whole and then we would debate again to council. And he said, yes, Councillor Norman, because you never were following the rules. So if you wish to investigate it further, we can ask our CEO to do a report that you can, so we all understand, because I did not understand this until last week. So if you choose a committee of the whole structure, you discuss it, you can ask your questions of staffing, you make your motion to council, but when that motion comes to council, it is not debatable. It's presented. You can say, I support the motion because I believe it is a good motion. Or you can say, I am not going to support this motion because I feel whatever, but among yourselves, there is no longer debate. And when you look at the provincial and the federal government systems that use this system, that is the way it works, and that are the rules of Borneo's rules. So if you've heard, we can ask our CEO to bring forward a report, so we'll understand how it will affect us. Because basically, so far today, we've had no debate on issues. Councillor Guinea asked for an amendment, and that would still be fine, but there could be no debates within council any longer. So then you need to think about, so will we be filming the committee of the wholes? At which time people have to understand that's what they watch to see the backgrounds, because then we do not represent all the background papers at council. The motions come forward, but there can be no debate on the motions. Councillor Charlton.
So is this something the other municipalities do? So when we had our training with Pam moved, it was reiterated to us that we discussed the issues at committee of the whole, so we have those 2 weeks. So our residents can listen and watch the committee of the whole meeting, they can understand information, then they can give their perspective, which would then influence how we vote when it comes back to council. So if there's no debate, is this just because it's Borneo's rules, or is the town of Yarmouth able to debate because they follow Robert's rules?
Perhaps, I am not
So could
familiar
we,
with Robert's
so
rules.
that in our report, then if that's the only way that you properly debate at committee of the whole, because if we're going to have committee of the whole, we're gonna put it out to the residents to hear the perspective, my role would be to sit here and be the voice of those residents, which would be a debate. So we'd be missing the mark on that, so could we not have in that report, it explored for Robert's rules, so that we can do this properly?
I'm not an understander of Robert's rules. And I do not believe it's a 2-week gap between, anyway.
I've looked at other municipalities, Mayor Norman, and their committee of the whole meetings are generally 2 weeks apart. It gives those 2 weeks for the public to engage and for councillors to find out the facts, and then it comes back to council.
Which would require one council meeting a month, rather than the present 2 that we now have. Councillor Guinea?
So I just want clarification. So if I understand this correctly, if we have a meeting of the whole,
Right.
we discuss it, we debate it, and then, so then we leave, and then I'm talking, and I'm for it at the meeting, and I'm talking to residents after, they bring up some things that, I never thought of. Then at the meeting, I can say, I disagree because, and list my things, stop. Is that correct?
That's
And
it.
it's not debatable, but it's just, I can list it, and that's been, okay, thank you.
But it's debates that we've had.
Yes, yes.
But you would simply state why you were voting for or nay, but no debates
Yep.
between.
But we can state our reasons. Yeah.
Councillor Fancy.
Yeah, so, again, I'm trying to reiterate, just so I understand what what we're doing here. So if we have council of the whole, say this was council of the whole, we brought up something, we talked about it, made a discussion, we made a recommendation, we put the recommendation back to council, but as Councilor Gidney said, some The whole idea is to give us time to not just make a vote on something, so we, all of a sudden, because there could be other things, other factors that come in, and all of a sudden, we come to the next one, we say, oh no, I should never ever support that. So you can make a statement. You can't make a debate, you can make a statement. So I make a statement, then Ralph can't go, Councilor Gidney can't say, well, I want to talk about that. No, that's a statement. So we make those statements, I will not support this because, and that's what we do. Okay.
Councillor Brown.
So if it comes back to that point, you said that we could, make an amendment to the motion during the council meeting? Is that
Yes.
correct? And would that amendment be up for debate?
No, often what happens through matters get referred back to committee of the whole. If, let's say a matter came forward and then many things changed between then and council had all varying opinions and wanted to debate that, the matter goes back to the next committee of the whole meeting.
Okay.
Is where it goes back to. And it goes back to the committee of the whole. And the committee of the whole could re-deal with it, you could have your debates there, and then it comes back to the next council. That's 2 months. But these things will all be made clear if it's the consensus of council that that's the way you wish, that if you wish a report prepared, we have one for August. If you wish to have a report prepared for August that lists the pros and the cons and how it would actually work like, because I believe it's very important to follow rules.
Oh, yes.
And the rules, and we need to follow Borno's rules. If those are the rules that we have adopted, if we wish to change all those things, then we'll have to do some rescinding of promotions and redocting rules and codes and our policies and procedures. And staff, our PO will be able to consult with staff so they can give their insights on a meeting a month and how it affects, how much business we can actually be done. I know we've all heard before that the planning department is the department that will probably be delayed the most. Because currently the 2 council meetings, planning matters can be moved forward a little more timely, that come from, the planning advisory committee. So it's the planning matters which will be delayed longer. I believe some municipalities' planning matters can take 4 or 5 months.
In regards to that comment, I also looked at other municipalities and their time frames for rezoning and things like that, and they are about 4 to 6 months.
That's right.
And it was mentioned before that HRM could be 9 months for these development permits. So if we're talking about rezoning requests and development, these are big things that have huge impacts potentially on our community for sustainability and other factors. So they shouldn't be pushed through fast, in my opinion. And the biggest thing that we're missing here is the public engagement, which is a part of that process as well.
Tell that to someone that needs to rezoning for a business, that they're gonna have to wait 6 months.
Yeah.
However, is it the consensus? I just need a little nod or an indication. Would you like to see a report of
Yes.
a
Yes.
committee of the whole structure? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So that will be done. And that will be done for August.
Thanks.
14.2. So, as you recall, council made a motion whereby there would be a representative from each district along with Councillors Amaro, Brown, and Charlton, and the bylaw officer, CAO, and input from the RCMP, and they would review all the public feedback that we have received individually or as a whole on the noise bylaw, and they would bring those recommendations back. So there was an ad posted, and we have in front of us those people who expressed an interest in taking part on the committee. It is your job today to decide who from each district is going to represent the district. So if we begin with District 1, there is currently no one.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, we
Yes.
haven't read the recommendation.
We cannot make the recommendation until we have the names.
Okay.
So we need the names first. Can't make a motion with no names. So therefore, District 1 currently has no, there's no applicant, but I would assume that if one was found prior to the next council meeting and if these meetings hadn't started, we could put one in. District 2, Darlene Gaskell Chandler was our only applicant. Does there anyone have any just reason why Darlene Gaskell Chandler could not serve as a representative for District 2? Okay, so we have a District 2 representative. In District 3, we have 2 candidates, Catherine Kellum and Shauna McDougall. A choice has to be made, and it has to be made through this council. So you've read, as they were asked to provide their reasons for wishing to be on this committee. Comments? Patty, Councillor Charlton?
I'd like to start by saying I think either one of these women would be great additions to this committee. I would like to recommend Shauna McDougall. I think it's important to include people who haven't lived here and have different perspectives besides people who have just lived here for a long period of time. A lot of our applicants have lived here for a long time, so I think it would be nice to have a different perspective, so I would like to recommend Shauna McDougall.
Any other comments? Are you all in agreement?
Yes.
You agreement? Okay, so we have one. Sean McDougall. District 4. We have 2 people have placed their names forward. Alan Laws and Mary White. Comments? Councillor Romero.
I think Mary White would be an excellent candidate. She has a background in business and economics. I think she'd have quite a bit to bring. She identifies with disability as well, so I think she'd have quite a bit to bring to the table.
Councillor Giddy.
When I reviewed these, and I'm just gonna do a general. The applicants, I think are well qualified. I believe Alan Laws can bring a lot because of his background, and Mary White also. And I'm more inclined to work with Mary White because she identifies herself as a person with a disability, which I feel that they have more, not more to say, but they have more to represent. I think would be a better word. And I agree that she would be a good, I think that both candidates would be good, but I'm leaning towards Mary White myself.
Anyone else wish to speak? So we have 2 people in support of Mary White. The rest of Councillor Charlton?
My recommendation would be for Mary White as well. I think both of these candidates are well versed, as Councillor Guinea said, but we need to make sure we have a diverse group of individuals, so my recommendation is for Mary.
Do you see any head shakers?
Yeah, that's good.
You're nodding, and this is just
Yep.
a consensus until we can get to our motion. All right, so District 4 becomes Mary White. District 5, Craig Doggett, Davis Johnson, Robert Ralston. Comments? Councillor Romero.
I think Avis is a wonderful candidate. she deals with bylaws daily, so, and she's very interested in noise bylaw. I just think that she would have firsthand, at the bylaws, so I think she would be really good for this position.
Councillor Gidney?
There again, we have three very well qualified individuals. I really struggle with this one because they are, there's so many good qualities. But there again, I have to agree that Avis Johnson would be, in my opinion, the best candidate. And not to take anything away from the other two, because they are very good candidates, so it's, but under these circumstances, I think Avis would be a better choice.
Councillor Fancy?
I guess since from my district, I should say something. Craig Doggett, exceptional. I mean, he would be exceptional. He's a really nice guy. He's an engineer. He'd be very fair. Avis, Robert. Robert is very, very qualified. If you talk to him at all, he's very, very knowledgeable. He would do an exceptional job. But Avis also too, being the deputy chief of Acadia First Nation, gives another perspective into it too. You're bringing in something that the other people aren't going to do. So we want to have it make it so it's all inclusive. You want to have that.
Any dissenting views? So a nod for consensus for Avis Johnston. District 6, again, we have 3 very qualified people interested in serving on this committee. Melvin McKenzie, Jessica Van Dyne Evans, and Albert White. Comments? Councillor Charlton.
I think these are all great candidates as well. The one that caught my eye was Melvin because of his firework experience, and given the fact that we're potentially introducing some firework bans, I think that he would be a good candidate to offer a different perspective.
Other comments? Councillor Brown.
Like they said, we've got 3 very good candidates here. I've known Melvin most of my life, and he would be an excellent candidate. I would lean probably towards Al White because he's been a military police officer, did safety training. He was Justice of the Peace, and as an ISO coordinator, he understands quality and setting things up. For me, it's really almost a toss-up between the two because I think they're excellent. And Al lives in my area, so if you went with Melvin, you would be getting a different perspective. So it's, you know, I'm having a hard job weighing. Just giving the information, but I would almost have to say that I would go with Melvin.
Other comments? Councillor Fancy.
Part of this is that sometimes we don't know the people, or if you don't live in the district. So I know Jessica, and Jessica is very fair, involved in a lot of things. And my initial reaction would be Jessica, because she'd be very fair on what she does. But I don't know the other two, so it's kind of hard to say which one I would choose. So if you read this time, I'd have to say, if we just go for what we said here today, I'd have to say Jessica, because sometimes it's the personality along with it. It isn't just all the information that goes with it.
If we were a municipality of 30,000, 40,000, it'd be very difficult to know people. I believe it's important, you know, there's lots of them. But anyway, so we have 2 swaying toward Melvin, 1 toward Jessica. Councillor Gidney.
There again, I don't know these 3 individuals. However, what I've done is read what they've submitted to us. And make, some of these I have to make a decision based on the submissions. There again, Jessica, she doesn't have a lot, so I'm not sure exactly where she's coming from. But with But Melvin and Albert both have very good write-ups, I'm very impressed with both of them. And I'm leaning towards, Mr. McKenzie. His background seems to be more in line with what we need here, and that's where I stand at this point. Thank you.
So I believe Mr. McKenzie is ahead. Councillor Brown?
I was just gonna point out, like from all the letters that came in, that, Al White was very strongly in favor of my position when I brought Melvin was against my position. I think it's important to bring dissenting views in. We don't want to develop a committee where everybody agrees with a predetermined. We want the different points of view, different areas represented, and that's mainly the reason that I lean towards Melvin.
Very
Because
honorable.
he brings a dissenting opinion.
Councillor Charlton?
The only other comment I was going to make was it would also be nice to have maybe a male or two, because
Did you
right now.
notice we're all females so far?
We're all just
It's all
dating.
females so far.
Perhaps
So
we
men
can
that
find,
are,
we can
men
find
that
someone
are,
for District 1 that's also male. Just for diversity.
I'm not sure we're gonna stick together on this if we put them on.
so is it Melvin?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Alright, so it's Melvin, so now we have the names. Oh, and District 7 was one person, Judy Frail. Does anyone have any just reason why Judy Frail should not serve on this committee? He's good, Carl says.
Yeah. I would
Okay.
like, can I make a comment? When Judy sent her letters out, she had a lot of really good points that she made when she sent her letters to councillors. And that made me realize how much we need people with different backgrounds and different views to make this a better bylaw. So I think she's gonna be an excellent addition.
So we have the names, so when you make the recommendation, your motion would simply be, I so move that the following, residents serve on the proposed noise bylaw, is that what you call it? Ad hoc, committee for a noise bylaw, and then you would list them as Darlene Gaskell Chandler, Shauna McDougall, Mary White, Davis Johnson, Melvin McKenzie, and Judy Frail. So who would like to make that motion?
I did have one question.
Yeah, you have a question?
Where we have one, district open, do we have to leave that open for somebody from that district, or can we appoint somebody from one of the others?
The motion that was made to form this committee clearly states a councillor from each district, a resident from each district.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
in order to do that, we can rescind the motion next month, and
Yeah, it'll hold it up long.
so we can't according to the motion. Councillor Fancy.
The other thing you had mentioned about that maybe somewhere along the way, somebody from District 1, so we gotta be careful. If we make the motion, we can never put someone from District 1, because the motion will be made without them.
Unless the motion was worded, well, the next council meeting wouldn't be until August. And
Okay.
things have closed.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, okay.
So the motion could state, and still seeking a vacancy, and would that be awkward? To allow it to be open? Yeah, right, it would be awkward, so my comment was incorrect.
Okay.
Councillor Charlton?
So can it be continued to be advertised that the committee is seeking someone from District 1, much like it would do, for planning advisory committee, if the vacancy wasn't filled, they would continue to put out advertisements in the Source Door Breaker?
We can do that, that is the wish of council.
Deputy Mayor Hughes, it's your district, do you feel that we should continue to advertise to seek a person from your district?
I don't think anybody wants to look for it. No one
Okay,
has.
so I think going along on the councillors,
But one person is not consensus, so I would like to ask if
I would ask the rest of the council.
we
Do you
still,
wish to leave that open and continue to advertise? understanding, once this committee starts meeting, it should be a cutoff.
Yes,
I
I
will
will think
should-
that there should be a deadline, Mayor Norman, so to the CAO, when do we think that this committee will start?
I expect the committee will start in September, but documentation and other stuff will go out third or fourth week of August, I would expect.
So could we not re-advertise and with a cutoff of like the middle of August perhaps?
Well, you'd want it before our next council meeting, and our next council meeting is the second Tuesday in August.
So we could have it for the cutoff date before the second council meeting?
Would we be breaking a motion if we added another person? If we made this motion,
Yeah, that's,
that this is who sits on the committee, with District One yet to be determined,
No, that's fine, just me.
it's just vacant, and then we can, if anyone comes forward, we would have their name by the next council meeting.
So the next meeting, if council, is the second Tuesday, whatever date that is, August
10th.
August 10th, so that means the agenda package goes out on, it's on the
Fourth.
3rd or the 4th, so the deadline will have to be July the.
30th.
Will have to be July 30th or somewhere around there.
Friday,
So if we agreed today, we couldn't put an ad in the social breaker until next week,
the 21st.
21st, you get one ad in
Give
there
us
per
1
week.
week. And we've heard the opinion of the counselor from the district. Counselor Fancy?
I like the thought of it, but the whole idea is that once we make a motion today, it's gonna come up on August the 10th, and if we don't have the motion right, are we gonna have to redo it? And it's because we only have 1 month in between, then we're into September. So I believe that we should just go forward with what we have.
With who we have? Counselor Charlton?
So if we move this motion today to recommend all of these people to the
Yes.
committee, and then someone comes forward from District One, would that motion not just be to add that person from District One to represent the ad hoc bylaw committee, because that's how it comes forward with planning advisory committee? And saying that so we could get one advertisement in the social breaker, we would be able to reach out to our constituents and let them know that we're seeking someone for District One. So I don't think this should be disregarded. I think the deadline should be there before the council meeting, and it's one last chance to try to find someone to represent that area, because we're missing that. There's not a councillor from District One on the ad hoc bylaw committee, and if we can't get someone, then fair be it.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So when the motion is made, they'll say District One currently vacant. And then, and as PAC, and directions been given to staff, respecting placing an ad, and it can also go through social channels as previously asked. Okay, so who's gonna make the motion? This is the awkwardness of not having motions, right? Councillor Brown?
Okay, I move that we, appoint, for District One, is vacant. For District Two, Darlene Gaskell. District Three, Shauna McDougall. District 4, Mary White. District 5, David Johnson. District 6, Melvin McKenzie. And District 7, Dee Frail, to the ad hoc committee. And we will, I guess that's it, wasn't it? Okay, stop there.
Seconded by Councillor Charlton. Questions, discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Opposed by 1. And, I can't believe it. That ends our public presentation, except for first presentation at 10:30. Mr. Hatt, were you expecting anyone from your group to join with you?
No, I guess not.
Because it is 10:05, we could take just a quick break. Well, he's on at what time? 10:05, we'll take a quick break to 10:05. That may want to see the
Third was the
presentation.
agenda, so we don't wanna start too early.
Alright, so we'll start your presentation, even though we could start it now, but we do advertise, and there could be public interest in what you have to say. So we will, start your presentation at 10:20. Are we doing any camera work now? No, we'll take a break now. So, we're on a recess until 10:20. Brian, happy to have you here today. I know you spoke to us, earlier, but we are, well, I shouldn't say I am looking forward to the day when we can be that missing link and be part of an ATV multi-use trail that will go from Halifax through to Yarmouth. And Queens County is one of the big stumbling blocks, and you have been working for years to get this done, so we are eager to listen to you, to know if there's anything, as we spoke the other day, if there's anything that we might be able to do as a municipal government to help you along in your pursuits. So, the floor is yours, and welcome.
Thank you very much, and thanks for giving me the time to bring you up to date on our efforts to make this come true. I divided this up and let you know what kind of problems or constraints or challenges we have to get over or around to get this done. And there's quite a few, but none of them really insurmountable. It's just going to take some time. Political will is a big thing with all this. And so what we're talking about today is trying to get from Brooklyn to Liverpool, and then from Liverpool to the county line, Charlton County line. At this time, the priority is getting from Brooklyn to Liverpool. That gives us connection to Bridgewater, which in the eyes of different levels of government, that link will change things as far as the Trails Act for the Bog Road and on to Hunts Point. TIR will obviously be involved, so the priority right now is to get from Brooklyn to Liverpool. So if we can do that, it's going to give it a big boost. And so here's some of the problems, or I guess you could call them constraints, and some of the successes we've worked out. Number one, we'll start with Brooklyn Energy. That's the furthest, I should say, east, northeast. There is an existing trail that goes behind Brooklyn Energy. I'll show you a little picture there later. And it goes behind Brooklyn Energy, and the ATV group had an LOA with them to maintain a trail to get to the pipeline road. So since that, we've changed the LOA in favor of the Queens Rails to Trails Association. So now we'll be responsible for that, and we're going to change that and bring it up to standard for multi-use. The next problem, constraint I should call, is the Pipeline Road. The Pipeline Road is under the control or management of Nova Scotia Lands. And the ATV group also have an LOA with Nova Scotia Lands. Department of Lands and Forestry decided that they would deal with Nova Scotia Lands on this issue and get the LOA changed to the Rails to Trails, and they have worked on it, but the changeover hasn't occurred yet, so we're still waiting for authority to work on that. Basically, that's going to take us from behind Brooklyn Energy right up to the Nicholson's Pond Road. And there's a bridge, a dam, and a public road going into that dam. We want to get on that public road for a short piece to get to the 103. And we're going to stay on the north side of the 103. So it's only a short distance, but we've got to get approval from TIR. I've already met with TIR several times, at least twice on-site, plus some boardroom type meetings. And, they're still looking into it, is basically the response. We're looking into that, and they've been looking into that for at least 2 years or more. So, that brings us to the 103. So there's actually 3 groups involved in that short little space. Nova Scotia Lands and TIR are the big ones.
I could interrupt, when you say you have to get on the Nickerson's Pond Road, which is a public road, do you just mean to cross it, or actually drive on it?
The Nickerson's Pond Road, I don't know if you can envision this, but, when you get on Nickerson's Pond Road near the dam,
Yeah.
you come up from the brook. If you look across there, up just a very short distance, there's an old road. And it used to be the Nickerson's Pond Road. But when they built 103, they moved it down a bit, and they put a big underpass in. If you go back up, you see there's a couple houses, and they come to a dead end. Well, that used to be a road right through. Well, once we get on the Nickerson's Pond Road, we plan to use that old road to get up to 103. So it's only a very short distance, like 100 feet, roughly, to get on that old road and then up. So we're basically just crossing the Nickerson's Pond Road. This sticker doesn't seem to be working here. Is there a way to do it? Yeah. I tried it once and it worked. Okay, thanks, that'll work. You don't want it? Oh, there we go. Okay, this is an aerial shot of, what we just spoke about. At the top right is where that would be Nickerson's Pond Road. That's where we come onto it would be the north side of the 103. I found out after discussions that TIR owns 200 feet on the north side of the 103. Oh. Okay, so we get on right here, stay along the north side of the 103 until we get down to Highway 8. And there's the parking lot right there, the carpool parking lot. We cross between the 103 and parking lot.
No, that's Great Hill.
Is that Great Hill? We're not that far.
No, way down here, this is.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah, right there.
You gotta find water.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Great Hill, we just pass over that all the way down, right here. We're just between the parking lot and the ramp. We go there, cross over number 8. Okay. Cross number 8, so side of the parking lot, and we continue on until we hit the trail that leads into Pine Grove. That's existing. So at that point, you put up barriers and some signs to direct all motorized traffic to the underneath 103 by the river to get on the Trestle Trail. Okay, now, once you hit the Trestle Trail, that gives you access to the Irving and the other garage, whatever it is, for gas, food, you can, pardon?
Shell garage.
Shell garage.
McPherson's.
And, yeah, McPherson's, places to eat and, some refreshments. So that's gonna open it up for most of the services you need. And there's another little diagram showing how you come from, along the 103, down by the parking lot, underneath 103 by the river, and then you come back, connect into the trail that goes down to go to the Irving or in this area here. The Highway 8 and the Highway 3, you can cross at 90 degrees, so you have a driver's license and your insurance and everything's in place. Any one of those streets at 90 degrees. So you can go from the Irving to Superstore, or you can go from the Superstore to Donald's, or as long as you can cross at 90 degrees or very close to that. And you have a driver's license, insurance, everything, you can do that. So that opens it up for a lot of services for the traveling bicycles or four-wheelers or whatever you have.
Brian, wouldn't they have to park? Wouldn't they have to park at the Irving? Because they could cross the street, but then they're on like the land of the car dealer, and then they're on Sobeys land.
Well, the trail
Takes you right to
crosses behind the Irving and continues on down here. So you can, I don't know where you want to get to, exactly what you mean, do you want to get to a Superstore, is that what you mean? Or?
That's in behind, I think, Snow Museum.
Yeah,
No, when you said, oh, you know, they'd be able to drive to McDonald's or whatever,
Yeah.
I can't envision how they would be able to, from the end of the trestle trail, then physically drive. I mean, they can park there.
but you can come, first of all, you can come across to the Superstore and then down behind McDonald's. You wouldn't be able to use the drive-thru.
If Superstore allowed the use of the parking lot. Or-
Yeah. There's no, well, we've already approached Sobeys for permission to cross their property, and we're still working on that. And that was for another route. But as an example, if you want to get to McDonald's, you can come out, go to the Superstore, go behind McDonald's and park there. You can come down to the Irving and cross there, and the dealership has given us permissions to go behind the dealership on their property and go to Sobeys or Tim Hortons. And eventually, I would imagine Sobeys will let us pass through there to get to the hotel and the Marriott Center. At the far end of the parking lot, that would be this part of here, across there, there's lots of options, Jeff.
So, Mr. Hatt, so just further to Mayor Norman's question, I think her question was related to, if you've got 8 or 10 ATVs traveling together, and they come through the trestle trail to the Irving,
Yeah.
I guess someone might expect that they're gonna park their vehicles there, they're gonna walk to Tim Hortons, they're gonna walk to Superstore, they're gonna walk to McDonald's or wherever it might be. That would be the assumption today, but what you're suggesting is that in sometime in the future, ATV access across Highway 3 to go to Superstore, to go to Best Western, they will not be doing that, they'll actually be driving across Highway 3, Bristol Avenue, or I guess Highway 3 there now.
Okay.
On a regular basis, sometime in the future, that'll be a normal expectation of ATV use in the future.
Well, I don't know how much would be used, but I know it'd be legal. They could if they wanted to. It's not against the law to cross number 8 or number 3. So wherever there's a 90-degree crossing, they could do that legally, drive across.
Yeah, so I guess the concern would be without a structured pathway for people to follow, it could be very dangerous if people are just all of a sudden going through the Sobeys parking lot in different locations to get to the Highway 3 over by the Marriott Center, to get to Best Western, to stay there overnight, as opposed to a dedicated route like you see as you're going along the highway there. Or if they want to go to the Superstore, there's no dedicated pathway or trail to get to the Superstore. One might go one way, one might go another way, and you'd have multiple ATVs going different ways through a public parking lot.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the safety concern from the public, and I think that's what Mayor Norman's asking, but is there a designated parking area somewhere where they're gonna park and walk? But the answer, you're suggesting in the future, it's gonna be acceptable norm for society that ATVs will be sharing that roadway or sharing pathways and parking lots with regular walkers, sidewalks, and vehicles.
Yeah, everybody that legally cross the road, can cross the road with an ATV or a car. They have a driver's license.
Up in Colebrook, they have the same situation. There's a Tim Hortons there and a Wendy's, and people drive the four-wheelers and side by side and park in the parking lot there. There's 20 or 30 of them there all the time. It's not, it's gonna happen here.
And there is a parking area just about there behind the tax building, next to the place, for people that can't cross the road legally, park there and walk, as you said. But that's feasible. And as an example, you just brought up there at Sobeys, we would have a designated route behind the Chev dealer through to Sobeys. That would be a future, way in the future route to give access to different places. But it would be a marked route for you to get from the end of the trail to different places. And that would be depending on the business. If the business wants access, they're gonna give us permission to put a flag, a route through.
Yeah, cause all you're saying right now is just what you're gonna do in the future, but that'll all be marked out and everything else when the all time comes.
Yeah, once they see the advantage, or what income they can probably get from that, then they'll meet with us and put a plan together. So right now, our plan is to get to basically the Irving and the other garage, the shell.
And then you're gonna start putting your energies on this end.
Yeah.
And that stuff can be the third phase.
Yeah, this is the most important part right now.
Is just to get to that Irving.
Yeah. I keep saying Irving, but it's not really just the Irving.
Well, no, I
To
know.
that
just to
area.
get to that area.
I don't wanna make
The
it
end
sound
of
like
the-
I'm
the
an
end of the
Irving.
trestle.
Yeah.
So, one other question, if I don't mind,
Yeah, no.
is you say that you're going to try to cross the 103, and you've been 2 years, and they're still waiting to think, what makes you think they're going to change and pick up the pace? Or, because that could just go on forever, right, if you don't.
Well, it
So
could,
what's
but the thing we have in favor now is that they've already done that in Bridgewater, at the golf course. They allowed the trail between the Highway 103 and the golf course. So that opens the door for everyone, as far as I'm concerned. It's a precedent set when they did that. Now we can refer to that and say, we just wanna do the same thing here. We're not crossing on top of the 103, the only crossing on 103 is under.
Right.
You can't cross the 103 legally anywhere that I know of yet. So that brings us to, so right now, those are the only constraints, and like I say, they're political constraints. Financially, we have some funds already allotted to try to start building this trail along here. And, of course, it's conditional if we get TIRs. So as soon as we get TIR, then we can start using that money to, and I would imagine, we don't have a plan in place for construction, but I think we'll start at the, Brooklyn Energy and work our way through until we get down to the rest of the trail there.
That section that used to come from Bullwater into where the Hank Snow is, the old rail line, that went to there. Did they actually transfer some of that section to the homeowners?
Oh, yeah, from everything I can see,
Yeah.
the deed indicates they own that.
Okay. There's most places, they left the right of way through there, but it seemed like that one section, they actually transferred to the homeowners. It makes that not a route we can use.
Yeah, that would have been a piece of cake.
Yeah.
For planning. Of course, that's not the way it is. Okay, and that brings us to the bridge. And of course, as everyone knows, we were fortunate enough to get that bridge refurbished, and we're having another opening. This is to put up the interpretive panels and finishing touches that were done on the bridge. It's completely done. Phase 2 finished it off. Everything's been renewed. It's not new, but like new condition right now. It was a big piece of this whole plan, and now it's in place. So from here, we'll start right at the end of the ridge. Here.
Brian, before you leave that photo,
Yeah.
and I was up that way, but I didn't take notice. Is there something physically there that would prevent an ATV from crossing that now?
Post in the middle.
There's a metal,
Yeah.
there's one metal post.
There's also a gate there now that's open.
Yeah, I almost got an ATV there last night. Somebody had gone in and turned at the post, and when they came out of there, they didn't stop at the road, they came flying out, and in 2 seconds I would've had them.
There's, yeah, you're right, that there's a gate there, and, we put it in and tried it, it works, we turned everything over to the region. And, we made a decision that we wouldn't close it off. Now, we leave the physical barriers that are in place. So really, you could turn it on right now if you wanted to, it's all set. It's a time gate, it closes at, it's in the agreement. Anybody know what?
No, it doesn't matter, because we're not using it.
I think it's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, something in there, it closes, so it's still open for bicycles and walkers, but it would restrict a motorized vehicle. And then open again at, it's 8 or 9 in the morning. Anyway, so, and the barriers that are there now are just posts, and it deters the majority of motorized users, but it won't stop everyone. You've got dirt bikes that will still cross, and you've got some ATVs, and I'm almost 100% certain you're gonna find that most of these aren't registered. They don't have any insurance, and the RCMP is aware of them, and they're gonna have to be dealt with. And that would be the first group that has to be dealt with. They have to have insurance and a license to be doing. There is another rule that's incorporated in this agreement that pertains to just the bridge, but it pertains to any trail that we build, and that is that you would have to be an association member to use that trail, because this is private property. So the rules are right now, if you cross private property on an ATV or an OHV, you have to have written permission from the property owner in your pocket. Well, there is written permission, but only for association members. So that means you have to belong to a club that's recognized by Nova Scotia ATV Association. We do have a club here. When you join the club, you're issued a number, and you have to have insurance and all the necessary pieces to drive. So these people aren't part of the club. They're a sit duck as far as enforcement goes. They probably wouldn't have insurance. They're not licensed, they're not registered with the motor vehicle branch, and they're not an association member. So there's all kinds of things that they're doing, and they've got to be brought to task. It's basically, if we can get rid of those, we're going to find that anybody that's bought insurance and has a machine and belongs to the club are going to be following all the rules to the best of their ability. And I think you're going to find a big, big difference once you get the authorized people using the trail versus the unauthorized, which we have now. We've always had that.
I will say in the past, when I was doing geocaching, we would do trail cleanups in like April and September, and we partnered with the ATV associations in Halifax, different groups did.
Yeah.
And the trail associations are very good about policing their trails.
Yeah.
And, like we saw, different people came in with no helmets, and they chased them right off the trail, wouldn't let them on there, so they've done a good job that way.
Okay, there's kind of an example, a little bit Our intention is different from this. Our intention, although the bridge is wide enough for two vehicles to pass like this, our intention is to have a single use. If there's some pedestrian walking on the bridge, then we intend to keep the ATVs off until it's clear. That would be our rule. And bicycle, wait, the ATVs are last to cross. Bicycles on there, it will cross, then an ATV. So it would be, motorized would be an exception to the traffic where they have to wait for the bridge to clear. So that would be our intention. Okay, this is another shot of what happens at the end of the bridge, and something of note is right here, right at the first intersection of Main Street. The rail bed crosses at about 45 degrees. So to make it legal or proper, we have to come down to the corner of where it starts at Main Street, cross close to 90 degrees to the corner of Central Boulevard. Anyway, so, and then cross Central at 90 degrees back to the trail. So it's a little bit of a hitch right there. It's something to keep in mind. And the next little problem or constraint is here. It's the same thing. We want to cross Lawrence Street at 90, so we have to, it's a very steep grade, and the regulations for the trail indicate, I think it's 15 degrees. So we have to fill in there a bit, and it should be just about level with the road before we cross. That gives you a chance to stop, the stop sign, which will be there, and you're kind of level, so you look both ways before you can cross, instead of on a hill like that, trying to figure out where you can go around.
And that's an exceedingly wide trail, because that's that old CN.
Yeah, it's wide, yeah, it's normally 44 feet on both sides from the center.
90 feet.
Yeah, well,
So at that junction, the trail pathway would actually be wider there to make that
oh yeah.
swing.
Yeah, even with what's there, which has, what's left, it's used, you can still do that without going any further wide this way. And that's pretty well the only physical constraint. Oh, actually, when you cross right there, there's a residence, I'm not sure who owns it now, but the trail, the rail bed actually goes through their property between a house and a garage or a building. I'm not sure what's there. So would have to be some consideration there on how you're going to handle, even though it's owned by, I assume it's owned by Liverpool or Queens. What exactly are you just going to complete the trail and go through, or we're going to put some fencing in, or a gate, or just gravel it and go it on through. Anyways, it's got to be considered. And that's right through now and brings us to Humphreys. And that's where the trail comes out, right there, to Highway 3. It's a Metapon. So we cross straight across to the southeast side of Humphrey. I was down and physically checked, and appears from what I can measure out, there's plenty of room between here and here along the pond, between the road and the pond, to build a trail. I've got the specs here for you, but possible constraint here with the Department of Environment. I would say the best approach to that would be to get someone out and have a look to make sure that there's plenty of room, so we don't need
You won't be in the wetland there.
No,
There's
I think there's plenty of room there, but I'm just saying it's probably a good idea before we actually say, this is our route, to have someone look at it and make sure it's not gonna be a problem. And, we anticipate to stay on that side, until we get to, this is the call center property.
Liverpool Business Development Center.
Yeah, Business Development Center, okay. Anyways, we'd like to cross there, because we're getting close to the crematorium property, and they've got a constructed, entranceway, and if we cross back here, we've got two options here. We can stay on, there's a bit of grass area between the road and the parking lot. We could go through, build a trail right on the grass area and not even go onto the parking lot, or we can go onto the parking lot and barricade section off that we need. And then we're behind the building here. We cross over this street here, this West Street. And we've got several options there, but just down here behind the building is the end of the trail. And that's where we eventually, where we cross, line up with that trail, and then we're on to West Point. Any questions on that area? Okay. TAT, which is TIR, we need that for the provincial property on the north side. We also need to look at underneath the 103 bridge and the river. It may have to be widened, because we want to try to avoid traffic meeting under the bridge. There's a limited visibility there, so I think we may have to widen it out and put a divider in the middle, and then have traffic on either side, not on the same side. So that's something to keep in mind also. Right now, the legislated width for any trail in the province, OHV trail in the province, is 66 inches. So of course, any construction we do would be 66 inches wide, when you're talking about barrier. So if you're, let's say any street we cross, there should be a barrier there to limit to 66 inches in town or out of town. Now we can, that's provincial standard. Of course, you own this, so you feel 66 is not wide enough or something, you can deal with it yourself. So that's a provincial standard anyway. Okay. I already mentioned the Central Avenue intersection, 90 degrees, and the Lawrence Street intersection is the same. Matching between the house and the garage, there's a possible problem there. And Department of Environment for early Unford. Rails Trail Association is going to submit an application for funding assistance for this. We haven't worked it out yet, but I'm working with Megan Roberts. We have some funds committee, but we can include that as soon as we get TAT online. And big thing we could use is a letter of support from Region Queens to TAT or TIR to assist getting this thing in motion. Get through. And of course, a big step would be to get an actual route approved by the council through Liverpool, or on region property, I should say. So the engineer, your engineer, has a copy of this, and he's had it for a couple of weeks now, and I haven't been getting any feedback, but I would expect he's going to look it over and see if there's some problems that we're not aware of. So, and he'll bring it to me or you to figure out how we're going to handle it. So So that's in the works. So those are some of the ways that you can help out with this. Okay, I've already mentioned
So Brian, you would let us know who you're writing to for the grant assistance, that we need a letter of support?
yeah, well, as it stands today, we have some funding to work on the trail from Brooklyn to, so, and we know how much that is, and it's already been approved, so we would use that in our application to the region, for assistance financially, and of course, by then we'll have an idea how much the whole thing's gonna cost to get from Brooklyn to Liverpool. And, we may not have enough funds to get it all done this year. It may take a couple of years to get it done. But, that's our intentions anyway, to get it done. And, DLF,
Department of Lands and Forests?
that's another issue we'll get into now, but are there any questions from Brooklyn to Liverpool? Because once we leave, Liverpool is another kettle of fish. Yeah, go ahead.
You had talked before when you were here about, like going on the south side of the 103,
Yeah.
and now you're looking more to the north side.
Yeah.
What are the constraints, cause it almost looks like if you went south side, it would make it a lot easier to cross and access the trail. Like the trestle trail, without having to go under the bridge. But is there a lot of other issues that make that route harder?
Okay. The south side was our first plan because we didn't know there was 200 feet on the other side.
Okay.
But that's a big issue, the 200 feet. We got lots of
room.
Lots of places to go around and stuff. The south side, we looked at that, and it's not really a big issue until you get to the property surrounding the American Center. Once you get off there, and then you have to use that walking trail as part of it, or put one beside it, and you gotta deal with Sobeys, and you gotta deal with the shed dealer. We had good success with the shed dealer, but Sobeys is still in the works. And the only way to get to the Trestle Trail, unless you go up over the big hill, and then down by number 8, and that's a major hill there.
Yeah.
And there's not much to work with, it's very close to the 103, so that's a big obstacle. And then when you cross, it's all a swampy area on this side of the number 8, and that was another problem we had to deal with just to get on. So once we found out there was 200 feet on the north side, so we can
Better.
Yeah, it's much better. So we've looked at, I don't know how many options on this, and over the last couple of years, and to us, our opinion is this is a feasible, cost-effective route. But if there's other suggestions, this is not set in stone, this is just an opinion of our group.
Your project. We're gonna follow your lead.
Yeah.
So that's the Department of Lands and Forests, we can get into that now. Once we get past this building, we run into a problem that this section of trail out through the Hunts Point is under the Trails Act. And it's been that way for years, and I'm led to believe that this is the only trail in the province under the Trails Act. Trails Act only allows hiking or walking. No bicycles, nothing else. So, conversation with people in DLF, they said that if we can get Liverpool connected to Bridgewater, and they'll change that designation to shared use, multi-use, so that we can get from Liverpool to the county line. So if we get this first part done, or at least in writing, then we can approach DLF to change the designation there. So we'll probably need some support there from the region, another letter saying, you know, we wish to get that changed. I think that if you went back historically, our council had a lot to do with it being under the Trails Act, so.
And I would suspect, Brian, when you let us know that in a timely fashion, we would do that through a motion to council
Yeah.
to make a stronger point. But we don't want to get it buried yet, so it's.
As soon as we get some kind of written approval to connect Liverpool to Bridgewater, then that's the time we can.
Or you let us know.
Yeah, sure, I sure will. So that would help us get through to Hunts Point. Once we get that approval, then we can start looking for money to redo. That trail is in pretty good shape as far as building trails, because it's already got the base and it's somewhat got the width in most places, so we just have to upgrade it. We don't have to build a whole new trail. Just follow that along, resurface it, cut it back so it's nice and clear. Have another inspection on all the bridges, several.
It needs to be cut out, some big rocks taken out. In some
Well,
spots.
yeah, some of those rocks are in place to keep cars from coming in at that point, or trucks. But it would be, yeah, it would be built the same as the rest of the trail and same standard. Okay, then we get to okay. And so basically our plan here, we haven't done a lot of work, there may be some other options on this, but what we've seen so far, once we get to the pit road, which is just past Silver Rock Drive. Pit road takes us up towards 103. Now there's some region property in there, but I don't have the mapping, so we may not have to use that road. We may be able to go up to region property, I'm not sure. But once we get to the 103 again, we'll stay along the 103 until we get to Broad River. Big constraint there is Broad River. So we thought that the most cost-effective way to get across Broad River would be to use the old Highway 3 bridge. So it would be used by ATVs and motor vehicles. And it's quite wide because it was part of the 100 series. We could use cement barricade to go and section off a piece on the side for ATVs to use, not the main travel portion. Actually, if you look at it, the white line that indicates the shoulder, even on the bridge, is wide enough for ATVs to use, so it would just be Jersey barrier or something like that to section off, not width for single use, like one direction at a time. Once we get across the Broad River, then there's another road that exists. It's used to be Water Road.
You have the next slide that shows this.
Yeah, am I coming up? So we go under the 103. Use the Water Road, go underneath the 103, the same as we did before. We get on the north side, along beside the river. And that's fairly high and rocks, a lot of rocks there now, so that's a lot of room there. And as soon as we get across underneath 103, there's a service road there that's already built. And that takes you parallel to the 103 right up to the existing trail, Portland Trail, your own trail. And once we get up to the existing trail, then that takes us through to the Charlton County line.
Won't that be a day to celebrate?
Well, someday. It's, it sounds like a lot, but once the okays come in and, yeah, we can do that, then it will move pretty fast. The government, not necessarily this government, but the government wants this trail built. And they wanna bring in bicycle traffic and everything else. And as long as we have carts that aren't connected, it's gonna be limited. But this brings us to we've already started on this, and we're part of this great trail, they call it. And we're gonna be called the Western Loop. And, the group are already working on this. And they've come up with some funding also. So, but I think it's federal money, but I'm not sure we haven't applied for it yet. But eventually you'll be able to get on until, let's say here, and you'll be able to go through the Yarmouth, around the French Shore, Sydney, and down Bridgewater and back to the pool, or right into Halifax, back to the pool. That's the intention. If we get our part done, that will put pressure on the neighboring places to get their act together and get it done. So that's our intention, and as I said, your engineer has the plan. There's the rough specs on trail width, and there's a section under the regulations that goes into it in depth. It's 10 or 20 pages.
Does anyone have any questions that we didn't ask as we went through? Are we all excited?
I don't really have a question, but I'm looking forward to when the trail is done, because I've done every foot of the trail from Yarmouth to Halifax, either by foot or by bicycle. And some of the sections were pretty rough.
Yeah.
But the sections that have been done with trails get a lot of use. And, it's not only ATVs, people out walking, people out biking, people taking strollers with their kids. They make beautiful trails. And, I think it's a good way to link communities and a lot of economic potential. If you get down around Yarmouth, through Hebron and that area, any hotel that's close to the trail is full of ATVs in the parking lot on weekends. People do a weekend run, and, it's a way to bring people in.
Well, we're multi-use.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can build to a standard that will.
Yeah. Track that.
That's our intention.
Yeah.
Are there any rest stops on the trail?
We have
Places they can
some,
pull off to,
there's no services, we have.
no, not service, but just like a place that they can pull off, they
Yeah.
maybe have a lunch or whatever, and just
Yeah, we've
get off
got,
the trail.
there's one in, both midway from Shelburne County to Fort Mattoon. And there is one at Somerville Beach on the other end of that bridge that's in the park.
Right.
But, storm took most of it out. It's usable now, but it was made of cement, it still took it out. And, we're gonna be putting a new facility in on the Midway River Bridge, just on the Lunenburg kind of side of that bridge. It's a memorial thing for one of the boats passed. And that's what we're right now. We try to put them halfway, but the problem we're having is if they're not in an area where there's some houses that can see them, they're susceptible to a lot of damage. But that's why we built them out of cement, tables, and benches and stuff like that. But they still find a way.
Last fall, I believe, I had correspondence from several people as did Councillor Brown, about the size of the aggregate
Yeah.
that's used down where the old Medway station was, where the bridge is.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to take their, I don't know, young child on a little bicycle and the aggregate was too big.
Yeah.
And you had indicated then that that larger aggregate would be covered. Was that
Well-
able to get done or not, or did it get worn down in?
Well, what we had, I think it was around 25,000 spent just on that trail from Brooklyn through the county line, and there's one spot, the trail is made of that, we didn't haul it, and that's what's underneath.
Yeah.
And, so what we did was we scraped it off, and we took tonnage from one spot and put it on another spot that was low, and tried to build it up, and we covered over with 150 tons of Class A. And it's still come back to, and, we know about that problem. And, the only way we know to deal with it is haul it away. And so that's what we've been doing, piece by piece, but it just keeps coming back, it's like a nightmare. But it's a very expensive one.
Just in case you
Yeah.
get contacted again.
Yeah.
I
You
was
can
gonna,
say it's a-
We're aware of it.
I was gonna ask about the condition of it, because I hadn't heard any complaints
Not
this summer,
you, no.
but,
Fingers crossed.
yeah.
We're hoping that the ATVs will beat it down enough
Yeah.
to make it hard enough, but it's,
Yeah,
and it's wood stretching it down there.
yeah.
Would, putting like a landscape fabric over before you put Class A to keep it from migrating through, or?
We haven't put any of that in.
Yeah, no.
We thought, well, we were told, like, I'm not an expert on that sort of thing, so I rely on the contractors, who want this fixed. And they said, well, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna haul it out of there, and then we're gonna put Class A on there, and so that's gonna solve the problem that's created. And we did it. And when we hauled, come back with the same problem again.
But my response would be they've been trying various things.
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah, we
Okay,
put a
just
lot
be
of-
patient.
Yeah.
Put a lot of money into that trail last year.
Any other questions of? Right. Well, I thank you. We see you back later this afternoon with your emergency management coordinator hat on.
Good, thank you very much.
And thank you, and let us know, like the trail act, the changing of that. Definitely should be a motion of council to give it the weight of the motion of council.
Sure.
Letters of support are, you know, if you think it requires a motion of council, then that would be next next month.
Yeah.
But if it's simply a letter of support for grant application, we can instruct that within. But if you think of a motion of council for a grant application, then you'd have to notify our CEO, so we could get it in our next agenda. So you should have, you know, you'd have to let them know by the end of this month. If you, we always think about, look at our council dates,
Yeah.
and then always look 3 weeks back. Just because writing reports often takes, well, not often, they do take time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, you can come up with, just call me, everyone's got my number.
Yeah.
Now we do.
You can call me anytime. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Hatt is packing up, we should have a motion to move in camera. Moved by Councillor Kidney, seconded by Councillor Brown, all those in favor? 1:30, so we need a motion to move in camera. Moved by Councillor Kidney, seconded by Councillor Brown, all those in favor? Passed. Welcome.
You were Jack's proxy?
Ryan Hatt, you are here to talk to us about the emergency measures plan. And the floor is yours. Off you go.
Oh, thank you very much. First, do a little bit of introduction here, but, my name's Brian Hatt. I was born in Milton, actually Liverpool, a few years ago. I left, at age 19, I joined the RCMP, completed 35 years. My last 10 years, I was posted here with Liverpool. So I'm quite familiar with some of the problems here and some of the people, and I've dealt with emergency services pretty well over half my life. I retired in 06, and 14 I became the coordinator, emergency management coordinator for the area. So we divided the presentation up into 2 small groups, and I'll start with introduction of my team. Louis Landry.
Hi, I'm Louis Landry. I'm living out in Port Mattoon right now. 2014, I retired from the military after 32 years as a military policeman. I was offered an opportunity to interview for this position. So throughout my whole military career, I actually dealt with EMO, so and participated in floods and fires and whatnot at home and abroad. And so I've been Brian's sidekick for the last 5 years. Yeah. Heather? And, Heather.
Oh, but we know Heather.
You know, in addition to my role as communications and engagement coordinator, I do public information officer, you know?
And Rhonda Matthews.
Hi, everybody. My name's Rhonda Matthews. I gave you your brief back in November after the election to talk about roles and responsibilities according to the Act. And so today we're specifically going to talk about your program. So I work for the province. I'm based out of Halifax, but I'm responsible for work with all municipal units between Lunenburg and Yarmouth. I'm originally from Newfoundland. I also have a military background. 24 years and have done some emergency work there. And I've been with the province now for 3.5 years. So I am your representative, your liaison from the emergency management office, and I work quite often with Brian and Lou in support of your plan and your program. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I believe you have a copy of the agenda. We're going to be going through the emergency program with some new items that are involved with that. Planning committee, EOC, training, exercise, communications. We're going to start off with the in-between the emergency plan. This plan is considered a living document. It's continually changing to meet the requirements of council. And Shelley Conley manages the plan. So if you need an up-to-date copy, you see Shelley and she'll have the most up-to-date. There's the update list built in the plan. You want to know whether you have the most up-to-date copy of the plan, and if you check that section, you'll see the date of the last revision. And if yours is the same, well then you've got the most up-to-date. So you can see her anytime. She'll provide either a thumb drive or she'll give you make arrangements to give you a written document. Okay, so yeah, section 19.1 in your plan gives the updates. And then Lewis and I completed a hazard risk and vulnerability analysis of the 26 events. What we did was there was a list of events that we went through and chose how likely that event may happen here, and rated that in 1 to 6. And then we listed the possible effects of that occurrence and listed those. And then we put a short list of things that would and who would be involved to mitigate the problems that would arise from that event. So that may be new in some of your plans. I think we did 26 possible events. Also, regarding the assessment of the plan, we go through a yearly assessment, and normally we have someone come out from Halifax, like Ronnie usually helps us with that. Okay. Anyways, so now we have the self-assessment tool, and we're going to use that this time. And we get Rhonda to help us out with that for the first run, and, basically, it uncovers if there's any problems in the plan, or if it needs to be revised, or if there's something new that we have to add, correct, does all that, gives us that information, and of course, we react to that. A lot of the stuff we come up with on these revisions, we'll take to the planning committee, and Louis is gonna go over that, how that functions. And maybe a certain department that we need to deal with, and they have a representative there, we'll get into that more detail. So, we expect our next assessment the 3rd of August. And we'll be done here with the help of Rhonda. Okay, so we move on to agreements. Oh, wait a minute, I'll jump at a turn. You had some information on the local state of emergency. That you wanted to give. Rhonda's gonna deal with that.
So we just added this to the presentation, not to reiterate the information that was already provided when I gave your elected officials brief back in November, but I just wanted to point out that this is one of the programs that you have available, or avenues that you have available to you in the event of an emergency that you need to have special powers. I just wanted to add this to the list, to bring that back to your attention as something that can be used by you to get access to those special powers if you need them during an emergency. So I also want to remind that when we are in a state of emergency provincially, a state of local emergency can't exist at the same time. So if there's something that is happening that you need to have access to special powers, then that would need to be incorporated into the state of emergency. Hopefully, that won't be the case for too much longer. We'll see how the COVID situation continues, but for right now, that's the avenue that we would have to take. So you would have to go through Brian, and who will contact me or the duty officer, and then we would get it included at the provincial, in the provincial state of emergency.
Thanks, Ron. We have some agreements in place now, and what happened was some of the departments, we had agreements in place for years, and they were getting aged, I guess, and some of the departments didn't feel it was appropriate for today. So we come up with 2 new agreements. One was for comfort centers and emergency shelters, so that this put a lot of things in place. If there's an emergency, so you have to deal with them, they're already in place and agreed to, like financial stuff and who's responsible for what, and who's gonna open comfort center and where. That's all part of this. So, and the second agreement was for shower facilities. We could get places lined up in case of water shortage that people could use to get showers. So it would be public shower. And basically, since these agreements were approved by you, we've had most of the historic comfort centers sign off on it, and the agreements were brought back for ratification here, and it will be sent up to them. And enough have signed the agreements. There's still some that they have yet to sign, but even without those being signed, there's enough now that we're comfortable that we can cover off if we have a necessity for a comfort center. So it'll be nice when the rest fall in, but right now we're looking good for that. The shower facilities, we have possibility of signing off for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas that are tentatively looking at the shower agreement so that we can use their facility as a public shower if we run out of water. 2 of them are, one's commercial and the other is a recreational complex in the Greenfield area, and they haven't said no, but they do have the agreement and they're looking at it now. We've got facilities lined up in West Queens and North Queens, and of course South Queens. In the past, historically, we've got agreement with for use of the Romero Center for public shower. So we're spread out, we have a problem in, Port Medway and Mill Village area. We can't identify a place that would be suitable for this. So if anybody comes up with an idea or a place that I'm not aware of, we can have a look at that, public shower facility. So things are going well there, and, I expect before we need it, we'll have enough places signed up for showers that we should be able to meet most areas, necessity.
Do any of the fire halls have a shower facilities?
North Queens has one.
I mean, out in Fort Mattoon or, I don't know.
Or Midway.
Fort Medway, I meant to say, sorry.
No, I checked with them.
Sorry.
They don't.
Or down in Greenfield.
Greenfield has one small shower, and we've got two places there that have public facilities for showers that we're anticipating will be positive. So, North Queens, when I spoke with them about the comfort center agreement, they mentioned that there's a slight, well, it could be a major problem, that when they provide water to the public for use when there's a water shortage, they put a hose out through the doors for people to get water so they don't have to man the station. And people are parking in front of the doors, so they're looking at a way to provide the water through the side of the building for people to fill up their bottles, whatever. So, I haven't been involved, and I expect that they'll come to, Chris with this idea. And the rest are happy?
Down in Port Medway, Mill Village, I think a lot of them get water from the post office.
Yeah.
I think they have a tap that they allow people to get water from.
Yeah. So there's no questions on those agreements, they seem to be going well. And, we're gonna continue working on them, it's been an uphill climb for a while, but I think we're on the other side of it. Anyways, turn it over to Lewis to explain the planning committee and how it works, and
Planning committee has a couple of major options. The planning committee is actually the keeper of the plan. The big binders that you have on your desk, it's very much a living document. Every day it changes. There's a phone number that's gonna be changed or added or whatever. So, the planning committee, is chaired by, our CAO, but it's quite often hosted by Brian and I. And, we invite a whole bunch of people that would normally be involved in the EOC, the Emergency Operational Center. That includes, TIR from the province, Natural Resources, RCMP, Health and Services. The fire departments have, appointed 2 people to represent all 5 fire departments that sit on our committee. Charlie Greer and Dan Stevens. So they come to our meeting as well. People from Municipal Services, come, Adam Grant and Scott LeBlanc. And of course, our communications, director. We also have, remember we used to have a room here in the corner with a bunch of radios? We have somebody in charge of that also comes to the meeting. So we meet every quarter. So the most important job we do is to maintain the plan. And another important job that we do is we invite Red Cross as well. And it's for us all to get together during a non-emergency to get to know each other and know faces and names and whatnot, so we can actually kind of have a team building atmosphere if we ever have to come together during an actual emergency. Some of the challenges that we do have is that sometimes we're not well supported. So it's a challenge sometimes to get all of the outfits out at the same time. We've had some awesome, really good turnouts, but then again, on the odd quarterly meeting, we've had very few people show up. So that's one of our big challenges, is having everybody show up. So, and that's the plan. EOC, the Emergency Operational Center, is responsible for policy and strategic direction. This is a municipal level emergency operations center. Site support and consequence management, info collection, evaluation and display, coordination of agencies and operations, resource management, and internal and external communications was probably one of the biggest important pieces of our of our EOC. So our, get the next slide. That's what the EOC, so the EOC location is actually in this room. And in your plan, section 5, at one time we had, all of your desks would be occupied by somebody on that graph. And we actually had, if you remember, you had telephones on your desk. So we had all that laid out at one time, so now that's kind of been put off to the side because the chambers are being changed. So once the chambers are finalized, then we'll reintroduce a new chart to what the EOC, this room here, and layout would actually look like. So we do have one, but it's, let me document the plan, right, so it's ongoing. So I don't know if you have any questions as to who might, Brian and I are under the planning section. So what would happen is if there's an emergency, we go on generally on 12-hour shifts. And if Brian would take the day shift and I would take the night shift, and when Brian is on the day shift, then he's planning the night shift's activities. Okay, forecasting any meals or, you know, need a dozer for something or other, you know, or whatever happens to be going on. So the planning section actually plans this 12 hours on. Okay, and then the operations section chief, if it's a forest fire, then it would be someone from forestry. If it's a police issue, there's an active shooter, then it would be a policeman in that job, right? Asking the floor here for assistance, whether it be more ambulances, buses, et cetera, right? Logistics is Adam Grant. And he would liaise with the municipality in regards to any of the resources that would come from the municipality, dozer or dump truck or whatnot. And of course, a very important section is the finance and the admin, because anything that is decided in this room, there's always a money value, or a money consequence that has to be approved by the CAO and or you and the mayor, right? Because it's going to affect the budget. So, next one. I know that's hard to read, but what we've done is we've actually made, it's called the EOC triggers, and it's just a guide. And the plan is actually a guide. It's not, anything in the plan is not solid. It's just it's a plan. It's a book of suggestions. And under here, for instance, this would tell us whether we should look at opening up the EOC or not. We should have a full activation. And if I could go down to number 2 there, weather, so I just said weather storm. So it says here, you know, the criteria is expected to meet within 24 hours. Blowing snow 200 miles in winds, 30 kilometers an hour is expected to last for 3 hours. Freezing rain, wind chill, etc. And then it says who is to be called out. Okay. So that's just a trigger matrix that we have. It encompasses a whole, there's more pages. It encompasses a whole bunch of different scenarios in which we follow, and we would make a phone call to Mr. McNeil to say, perhaps or perhaps not, we should open the EOC, depending on what's going on. And that's it for me. Any questions?
Okay, Ron is gonna give you some information on the training and exercise.
So we've covered the plan, which covers, different hazards and risks that are impacting your municipality. And we've covered the triggers that, are used as a guide to determine whether you may or may not choose to activate your coordination center and your operations center. But having, a coordinated, training and exercise plan supports all of those activities. So, providing your staff and the volunteers that support your municipality with courses and training sessions means that they have the knowledge available to support you during an emergency situation. So at NSEMO, we support the Incident Command System, which is a national-wide program used in the United States and in Canada and elsewhere And it's a system, that's widely recognized to help manage an emergency. We provide training, in, ICS level 100, which is available online to anybody who needs to take it. 200 is a 2-day session, 300 is a 3-day session for select individuals. Not everybody is expected to take these courses. There is an ICS 402 that is available for you, and other, senior partners who would like to have a basic knowledge of the program. Then, we can schedule that for you. It'll take a couple hours, and it'll just introduce you to the program. Or you can take the ICS 100 on your own time online, and we can provide you with that information. So both of those options are available to you. Other sessions that we provide from the provincial level, are with regards to, the operation of the coordination center or the operations center. The ICS 200 is a prerequisite for that, but that will support your staff in understanding, what their roles are and how they can operate within the center. There's also a information officer course, which Heather has tried several times to take, and the scheduling didn't quite work out for that with COVID interruptions and other things. But we're going to try and run another session in the fall, and then we'll make sure that Heather has access to that. There is a communication system that we use at the provincial level called Web Eoc. It's a situational awareness tool. It is still under construction and being built. So we've provided some information sessions and orientation sessions to the coordinators and the staff across the province, so that when we do the official rollout and everything is completed, we'll be able to be one step closer. And we're hoping in the fall that it will be complete and we'll be able to use it full on. That will be available to you for free. You'll be able to log in, access information during emergency. You can use it at the municipal level for any emergencies that are happening here. We'll be using it at the provincial level if there's a bigger problem happening. And that is available also during training, if you want to use it during an exercise or in a real event. Moving on to exercises, it's important to make sure that you exercise your plan. Having the plan is only half of the issue. You also need to practice it so that people know what it is and what it says. It very much is a live document, as already been said, but if people don't know what's in there, then that slows down the process, and in an emergency, you don't always have time to be looking for those types of information. So practicing and using it in an exercise, it can be something simple as a tabletop, or it can be bigger with a full-scale exercise with people on the ground simulating an emergency and dealing with it. So I support Brian and Lou in that, and by extension yourselves. I'm available all the time to support in working through little bits of the plan. And in practicing that plan, that means that you can identify any gaps or any, okay, that's not quite right anymore because of this, it needs to be changed, and we can update the plan to make sure that it's as accurate as we need it to be. You're not always going to have the 100% solution, and that's never the expectation. But if you can have an all hazards plan that can be adaptable to any situation, then that just makes it easier when an emergency does happen, that it can be dealt with faster. We have a new training and exercise team at our office. We have a training exercise officer and a manager. And so coming in the fall, we're going to be doing more provincial exercises, which you will be invited to participate. The coordinator and a committee will be invited to participate. Some of them will be small, just log into Web Eoc, communicate with the provincial coordination center. Some of them will be a bit bigger. And we'll be doing 2 exercises each year when we get the rotation started. One will be based on a critical infrastructure concern. We did one in May about the Kansas Causeway and what would happen if it got washed out. And then the second one will be called a crawl, walk, run rotation. And so the first one will be this year, will be in February, And it will be simply a communication. You can communicate through WUC to the coordination center, and we'll have some simple injects that you'll have to deal with and assess and send back. And then we'll start that cycle, then the next year we'll do again. A little more complicated. The third year, we'll try to do a full-scale exercise with the people out, and we'll probably rotate around the province and decide how we're gonna implement that. So that's what we're working on right now. Having these plans are important, but exercising them are just as important, so that you understand what's in there, and that all of the hazards are being addressed as much as they can be. Thank you.
Well, I think the WebOC is gonna be something you're gonna enjoy, because you'll be able to see what's happening in logistics or what's happening at the site, emergency, by checking on the website. You'll have authority to look at it, so you don't have to call anybody. Just get on there and you'll be able to see who's doing what, and who's got problems, what they need, without calling anybody. So it's gonna make a big difference. Okay, so, moving on. Heather is gonna do communications.
So, as many of you know, in different situations we've had over the past couple of years, I send out emails and post on social media and post on our website to alert the public of upcoming and at the time emergency situations or potential emergencies. Some of those things involve weather, some of them involve other situations. One of the things that has come up in our planning committee meetings is there could be a use for a flyer to be developed, which would have information, go to all residents so they have at their fingertips information about what to do in case of an emergency. So if there was a forest fire, flood, some other situation where extended power outage, what have you, some information about what they could do to help themselves. Number one, for the 72 hours of be prepared to isolate yourself for 72 hours if you can't get to it. But also how to make your own emergency kit, and some important phone numbers, maybe non-emergency numbers, those sorts of things. And a lot of those resources would come already been compiled federally, provincially, and other places, so we can R&D, rather duplicate from critical customer communications program that NSPI has. Power has a database that they compile of people, and it's self-submitted. You have a health issue that requires you to have power to operate your medical equipment. They put you on a priority list so that they know that in that area, if they can get power out quickly, or that people need to be able to get you somewhere where you can get power.
How's that working, Heather? Is it getting a lot of feedback from that?
We have a post up periodically on Facebook. We haven't sent a flyer. I'm not 100% sure how their database is working. That's not something they share with me.
It'd be nice to know, just what people we have.
I know at one point it was a bit out of date.
So for during Hurricane Dorian, like they've had this list for quite a long time, and during Hurricane Dorian, like of course the extended power outages, and they had to keep changing their times for the timing of restoration. And so this became an identified issue, because when people provided their information to be put on the list, they didn't give permission to say they could share it. So at the Provincial Coordination Center, we were kind of stuck that because of privacy, they couldn't give us the information. So what that ended up happening was, if there was somebody on the list that was going to be delayed again, or for multiple times for the restoration, they gave the dates, and then we reached out to the coordination, their EMC, to see if they could go and do a wellness check, and just to inform them that it was going to be a bit longer, and if they needed any additional support. And so going forward, because they identified this during Dorian, they wanted to, go back to the individuals and ask permission, can we share your information during an emergency with the emergency coordinators in your municipalities? And so they're working through the list right now to get that permission from the folks that are on the list. And going forward, anybody new that's getting added, they get asked that question so that we have permission to use their information when another storm like that happens.
Yes, so, other information on the flyer, you know, we've developed and evolved, to the community. We're working on that. We have a section on our website, which you can, check in at any time. Email has a tab on our website. It's filled with all sorts of links and information about, different, types of emergencies and different ways to protect yourself and look after yourself and your family. There's also a section on our website, in the EMO section, about, COVID health protocols, which early in the pandemic, we were putting up lots and lots and lots of information, but as it has, evolved, we're putting up more about, check with departments, check with the provincial website, because it's one-stop shopping there. Everything is there. Communications with Scotia is wonderful, keeping up to date and very current, and, information changes so quickly, especially now with vaccines and that whole, evolution of the pandemic. So, we've kept everything there, so you can still go back and look. We are encouraging people to check the provincial website first. As I mentioned, we do put things on social media, Facebook, the website, whenever there's anything coming up. Just example, last week or the week before, there was that heat warning. So that was out encouraging people to seek shade and make sure they stay hydrated and those sorts of things. And directing them to, Environment Canada's website where there's more information. And, so, on the topic of emergency alert systems, that's something else we've talked about in the planning group. 2 years ago, it was identified that maybe that might be something we might want to look into for our community. A mass notification system to say that something was happening that we should be aware of. So over the past 2 years, I've taken, I guess, webinars or information sessions with companies that offer different types of apps or engagement or emergency alerting programs that you can subscribe to and have tailored to your community. It's something that's still being reviewed by the planning group. And some of the things that they can do, whether they text you or email you, robocall, all sorts of different things. Some of them can triangulate specific areas that only will be alerted, will only get a certain amount of information. Say there's a forest fire and you wanted to let people know that you are being evacuated in half an hour or whatever, pack your things and go. You tell that group of people in the evacuation area one thing, and then you have your family that will be able to land there, that will alert them of other people outside that area of what they're doing or in that area where there's things happening. So there's all sorts of different things that all of these different types of systems can do. I think Ron is going to talk next about a different system that's.
So the advantage of having, these other systems is you have control over it and you can use it for whatever notification that you wanna have. The disadvantage, of course, is there's a cost of some kind. There is a national program that you're probably familiar with called Alert Ready. You would have received the alerts on your phone already with some of the incidents that have occurred in the province over the last year. And this is available to you. We are working through the process of formalizing how alerts get requested. So we've just finished working with the police, because a lot of the alerts that we provided are police related, with dangerous persons, to broadcast immediate alerts, like if you wanted to do a boil water order that the town of Annapolis just did last week, that's something that you can use the system for. It's simply to contact, Brian, it's approved through the CAO. You fill out the form with all of the information, the who, what, when, where, why, the instructions you want the public to adhere to, whether they would need to evacuate or whether they need to boil their water for, you know, a certain amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. And then the alert gets sent out. The advantage of the Alert Ready system is you don't have to subscribe. It goes out on your phone as long as your phone is a newer model. If people have an older model phone, then they won't have the technology in the phone to receive the message. So that's a disadvantage, but the alert still goes out on TV and radio. So it will, you know, this is an interruption of the emergency broadcast system. That's what this is. And so there's 32 that's broadcast immediate and 130 that are not broadcast immediate. So it won't interrupt the programming, and it'll be provided with you know, the news commentator or the DJ or whatever it is. So that's available to you, and there will be more information provided on that system so that you are ready to use it if you need to.
Any questions about the alert system? Okay, then we'll move on to,
Exercise Handshake is just a monthly exercise. It's held on the last Tuesday every month. When we had our little room here in the back, we used to come in, we'd fire up all the radios, the ham radios and the TMR, that's trunk mobile radios. It's a provincial system, and we do radio checks, and just in the last 6 months, New Brunswick and PEI have also joined in on that same exercise because they operate on the same type of radio system. So it's just an opportunity for the guys that do comms to get together once a month to check all the equipment up to and including, we have a sat phone. So we do a monthly check on the sat phone to make sure that it's working. We have an antenna on the roof, all ready to go. So it's just a monthly exercise.
okay, and then the last little while, people have been asking, or some people have been asking about the Cbc Tower and the Cbc radio. When the power goes out, we lose the radio. So I checked with CBC and tell you that there is no standby power. There's no battery, there's no generator. When the power goes out, we lose everything on the CBC. There's no radio transmission whatsoever. And of course, the next question is, why don't we have it or get it? Well, and why do we not have a generator and other places do? Well, the way the CBC rates them by population, so they figure how many people can receive the signal that they're putting out. That number of people puts them in a category. For example, Halifax is a category 1, so they have standby power. The Valley is a 3, and that's qualified for a generator by population. Liverpool is a 4, no standby power. So I guess if we had more population, then we would be qualified for a generator. So what's asked of the future is for this area, and they're going to redo the building, but there's no plan for a generator unless something changes population-wise, or they change the policy. But they did say that if the region was interested in entering in some kind of a partnership or funding agreement, they would look at sharing the cost of putting a generator and whatever else they need to get it running when the power's out.
There was never a generator there, right?
No. Well, unless they were working on something or whatever. But
Because I had a lot of talk about that too, and it seemed like they said that there always was a battery backup there. And
no. Not according to the people that work there. So they should know. So that brings us to questions. The Alert Ready and the other systems they spoke of, there is one system that's available that we can draw a circle or a square on a map. And that's the place we can send the signal to, the message to, which was really attractive. Because as an example, in Midway River, we could draw a triangle around the river and send out, say, the water level is getting higher, it's starting to go down, we should be able to get back in a week or so, whatever. That was very attractive. The bottom line or the restraint is that they have to sign up for this. In other words, I have to go to your place and try to explain to you, we get your number and name, we should sign this form so we can send that information over to you. So if everyone signs up, then you get total coverage. But if they don't,
If they use the alert, sorry, Brian, if they use the alert ready, that's the emergency alert, then anybody, is it within a certain GPS location gets it?
that works on cell tower technology.
Works on cell tower. So the way that we, promote using the system is you can draw a polygon around the area, but because it is based on cell towers, is that gonna hit an area with a tower in it? If it doesn't, then it's not gonna go to anybody. So what we promote is sending it to the whole county, that there's something happening. So then that identifies to people who may be wanting to travel to that area to turn around and not go there, or, people who are actually in the area to then, to follow the instructions that are provided. Of course, you know, it's not an exact science, because the cell towers are not with, you know, they don't follow the lines of the county that we've drawn on the map, so sometimes there might be a little bit of expansion in Shelburne or into Lunenburg. But if, and then of course, if it's something that's even bigger than that, then we could select the entire province to receive it, or we can select several counties to receive it.
Okay. Thank you.
There seems to be a lot of dead zones with cell reception and.
Yes, and that's, yes.
Yeah, I know.
So
when they
on top of having, you know, if you have an older phone, you're not gonna receive it. But if you're in a dead zone, then obviously you're not gonna receive it, you'll receive it when you come out of the dead zone. So a lot of the complaints that we get is people repeatedly get it. So if you turn off your phone and turn it back on again, it'll think that you're entering the area for the first time and you'll get the alert again. If you go in and out of the dead zone, you'll get the alert again, and so that's,
Yeah.
that's.
I know before they put the fiber up in last fall in Greenfield where I live, I wasn't able to access cable or like any TV that way. So all of our TV, we had one channel over the air, and over the air doesn't get that either. So we had no cell reception and only over the air TV, so we never were able to get them, or it would come in hours later when we finally got reception area. It's a weakness, but it's.
It is, yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah. We need new cell tower.
So, another thing I should mention is that we have something that may help you in an emergency situation. We are working on a guide for elected officials.
Okay.
What part you would play in this? And that's pretty well ready to go, I think, isn't it? It's getting close anyway. But we'll get that to you as quick as we can, and it might help you think about what you might have to do or what you may not wanna do if there is an emergency.
And what we shouldn't do so we don't cause more problems.
Yeah, so anyways, we'll get that out to you, shortly. Any other questions? Okay, we can do,
Just if I could just make a comment, just so council's aware, the biggest challenge I think EMO has really is getting solid participation from all the emergency agencies. So, I mean, as Brian said, we meet quarterly. You sit at that table and there might be 5 people there when there should be 15 or 20. And so we have some agencies in Queens County that I haven't seen that table ever. And so the time will come when they have an emergency and they're gonna need us, and we're still gonna have to respond. But we're not gonna be very helpful because we don't know the details of their operations. We know some, but we don't know what they're going to need, what they're not going to need. We don't know what their logistics are, how they plan to approach it, what staffing or equipment things they have available, or what they're gonna look for. So it makes it very challenging for Veronica and Lewis, who are trying to coordinate all that, not knowing, and they're worried about the weather, they're worried about all the hazardous chemicals traveling by truck or whatever on the highway and stuff, they're not worrying about planning for each individual emergency association or agency or department. But the time will come when those people need us, and they haven't been at the table, but we're still gonna have to respond. And so it's unfortunate that they don't see the benefit of coming to a meeting once every 3 months for a couple hours, and sharing and learning what resources are available, what all the other agencies are doing, but also contributing what they are gonna contribute to other groups in the event of emergency, as well as what they may need or what their expectations are. It's unfortunate, but that's for me, it's the biggest challenge we have, is that, like I said, some people around some agencies have never been to a meeting as long as I've been here. And we've sent out letters, we've sent out extra letters to them and remind them the importance of participating, and they still do not participate, which is unfortunate.
Something that I always thought about here too, is that, you know, like we've had the problems before in the past, especially like with wind and rain and storms and things, trees going down across the road. There's always been complaints that the fire department will go and cut trees up when they shouldn't be going up because you don't know what's going on. Well, I've seen it before where, you know, coming in from Caledonia into Liverpool, all of a sudden trees cross the road. Well, somebody had to go to the hospital, they get halfway in and all of a sudden they run into this tree. I mean, they have to go because they have to be getting it, but they don't know there's a tree there. And then, you know, and people are waiting, not just past the 72 hours, but just waiting, till later on, which it should be a priority to keep that roadway open, so then you get people like the fire department won't cut it out, because they'd say, we're not gonna leave our people in that kind of spot, and then they get blamed for going up and they should be going out. So, what kind of coordination, and also too, I'll put a two-part to you, because the second one is, I've always said I'd love to see if we could be able to get access to things like sand, so that people could, on their own, if they started getting, there's gonna be flooding or something, they could be able to get bags and sandbag around and be able to keep themselves. Something you could work on yourself, that, even if TIR said, yeah, you can go up here and start getting bags and sand if you needed to. Anything just to give somebody an opportunity to try and help themselves.
Well, sand's a great idea, you know, make some kind of arrangements for sand, but that takes you the work to get it done. The tree cutting, I can't really comment on that. I'm not sure if the fire department cuts a tree over here and then you've got a tree down over there and then there's a fire up here. I'm not sure how they're gonna, very quick to cut all the trees that come down. Sometimes there are quite a few, but it is TIR responsibility, or GAT, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the department that, well, they are, when they're called off the road, they're called off the road. And if the fire department wants to go to take their place, that's the fire department, I can't speak for the fire department. And I'm not saying don't go. I'm not gonna tell them what to do. That's their responsibility. Whatever they want to do, they do.
After Dorian, that was identified as an issue, and, transportation said, like, even though they were called off the road, if there was, like, the scenario that you described, where somebody needed to get through, they would have went, right? If they were called, they just needed to be identified. They would have went and done it, they would.
You just
like,
called off,
right,
they would.
they were called off for general, because for safety,
Okay.
but in that moment, if something needed to be done, they would have been there. So I think that, you know, just
Okay.
just communication of, and I mean,
Okay.
it's difficult, you're not gonna know everything that's happening and all the risks that are out there, you're not gonna know every tree that's across the road. But if people are identifying, like, that live nearby, to say, yes, they know that road, that tree is down and they can call it in, then you can get it on the list to go, you know, transportation knows it's there, they can add it on the priority list. The EHS will know that it's there so that they can, you know, try and find a detour or what have you. So there is some coordination that can happen, and those conversations have started with the planning committee. And that's something that maybe we wanna exercise, maybe we get down on a tabletop and talk about how could we manage that, so that the next time that it happens, we're better prepared.
I'll look into the sand thing and I'll get back to you.
Because people, no matter what, people will react or they shouldn't react. You know that, they say you're supposed to be in for 72 hours, if somebody's in trouble, you go help. But you do those things because people, even though you shouldn't be doing it, you do it, and that kind of thing. The same thing I'd love to have, see somewhere or another, be able to have a couple generators, just, it may not be for safety, but if people's fridges and everything's on, they're gonna lose all their food, if somebody could just have a generator, you go around and put a couple hours into something to get things cold again, to, especially if you're going past the 72 hours, you could be able to have access to that or something. I don't know, it's just, people will do something, they're not gonna lose the food, they'll do strange things.
Well, I think we're all doing good. Rhonda, Brian, and Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Wondering why I'm not sitting down?
You sat down too much this morning?
No, I
No,
got
you
a
were-
ruptured disc in my back.
Oh, I thought you were being the Lord of us all.
I can sit for about 5 minutes and I can lay down for an hour.
Well, we thank you, we have, we're glad to have our updated plan book, because I know the other ones have needed a lot of updating. So, and if anyone notices anything, or if anyone knows of a change in their community association, or the treasurers, or the secretaries, as you look, you'll see your contact list for all the halls. I believe that we want to share, this is,
We
it's not
purposely,
shareable.
we purposely removed all the names from the plan, so that we don't have to update names anymore, that we just have to update the phone numbers. And the phone numbers are checked every month.
For the contact names for all the centers and things?
There's no names, there's just, West
just
Queens
emails.
Recreational, Center, and there's a phone number. We know that Kathy Williams is the president, but tomorrow, right? Tomorrow might not, so we short most of that, and, Shelley maintains a list of all the employees and their phone numbers. So in the event that the EOC is, stood up, she will actually generate that list so that we have all the important phone numbers of all the important people that work within the municipality for that emergency.
Oh, good.
So, all the emergency numbers are in there, under organization and not by individual, mostly. I think, is it Dexter from, Mr. Dexter from, the ambulance service, EHS? There might be one or two names, but they're very rare.
All right. Yeah, this is a few. Okay, so I thank you. Always good to, so you're ready for another EMO track. You have not done one of those for a while, have you? Your mock emergencies?
We did a tabletop in the fall. It was
COVID.
difficult because of
Right,
COVID.
COVID.
But during the fall, when we had that little bubble of being able to travel, I did come down and we had some of the fire
Right.
departments here. And we talked through a scenario and worked through it. And once COVID is, once the protocols are a little lighter, then we'll be able to do more.
You need to put your feet back on the ground. Anyway, I thank you, and if you have any questions of us, you know where we are, and if any of us have any questions of you, you know where they are.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, thank you.
Have it back to you the whole time?
It's up there. I can clear it.
Yeah, we should have a motion to go in camera. Moved by
Probably these trouble.
Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Merrill, all those in favor? Okay, we're back in resuming our public, part of our agenda. We have one item remaining, Hillsview Acres renovation. There is a recommendation, if someone would still make that. Yes.
I move that Council of Region of Queens Municipality reject all tenders for Hillsview Acres project number 21011, Hillsview Acres renovations.
Seconded by Councillor Gidley. As we all know, funding was received from the province to construct 2 new washrooms, 2 new accessible washrooms, 1 on each floor. And funding for architectural design and the construction was provided by the province in the amount of $93,000. We did have 1 tender that came in at a cost which was, can I get the cost? That was $158,000, and that does not include any architectural costs involved. After discussion, it has been decided that the Region of Queens, we will follow through on the construction of those 2 new accessible washrooms. However, we will seek alternate ways to have that done, rather than through the tender that was presented. So staff will be working at finding other means to have that project completed. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll ask for the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Passed. Thank you all, and I adjourn the meeting, and have a safe rest of your evening.